Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita, with our beloved Ranga. We are in the chapter, The Yoga of the Intelligent Will, beginning with the line, we must remember the psychological order of the Sankhya.
Yeah. What we are going to read now would have been very much easier if we had the chart, but I have forgotten the chart. So I'll try and bring
Do
that
it next week.
Yeah, next time, so that you can follow what he's saying. I'm reading the para. We have read it already.
Yes.
We have to redo it.
Now we comment on each
Yeah.
line.
We must remember the psychological order of the Sankhya, which the Gita accepts. On the one side, there is the Purusha, the soul, calm, inactive, immutable, one, not evolutive, because it's immutable. If it is immutable, obviously it's non-evolutive. This is the experience of the self. Okay? Liberation. Your soul is liberated into peace and calm and not identified with body-mind life. On the other side, there is Prakriti or nature force, inert, without the conscious soul, active, but only by juxtaposition to that consciousness, by contact with it, as we would say, not so much one at first as indeterminate, triple in its qualities, capable of evolution and involution. So there is, at the highest level we have Chit Shakti, will and knowledge or consciousness and force. And when it comes down, they separate. At the highest level, they are one. And in the supermind, they are one. Consciousness and force, they imply each other. They are not two separate. Bayun, as Sri Aurobindo says. Two but one, essentially. But in the lower planes of consciousness, they separate. Because one becomes a many. So they separate.
Does it also lose some consciousness as well?
Pardon?
Does it also lose consciousness as well, the Prakriti?
Yes, consciousness less and less and less and less until finally in matter there seems to be no consciousness. But as I was saying, if you want to put it in mathematical terms, okay, for understanding's sake, the consciousness starts losing itself, and in matter, force is 100% and consciousness is 0. But it is not like that exactly, because both are involved with each other. So it's more accurate to say force is 99.9% and consciousness is 0.01%.
Oh.
They are there. In the self, it's the other way around. Consciousness is 100% and force is 0, because immutable, not moving. But that's not true. Force is there but not active. Force is there but not active. So it's more accurate to say that consciousness is 99.9 and force is 0.01. They are inversely proportional to each other. Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? And in different planes, different combinations. As you keep going up there, that's why Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, they are exchanging glances, Purusha and Prakriti. They are exchanging glances at each level, different relations.
Yeah.
At the highest level, they are equal to each other. Okay? So this is what he's saying. Prakriti or nature force, inert. The word inert means showing no response. When something comes, there is no response. Inert, without the conscious soul. Active, but only by juxtaposition to that consciousness, by contact with it, as we would say, not so much one at first as indeterminate. So indeterminate, in a very general way, it is there. Consciousness is there, but very, very hazy and indeterminate. No particular form. More accurate would be to say inherent in it, but not moving. Triple in its qualities. Triple in its qualities, sattva, rajas, tamas, corresponding to body, life and mind. Body is matter, and matter is tamas, darkness, non-movement. Okay, darkness, lack of intelligence, lack of response, lack of consciousness. That is tamas. Then the vital, there is rajas, movement, action, force, energy. But consciousness is beginning to come, but not much. Okay, desire is the most strong element there, will and desire. Then you come to sattva, the mind, understanding, balance, harmony. Okay, a certain settled poise. That's the manas. So these are the triple gunas or the triple modes of nature. Nature in the universe is characterized by these three forces: the force of darkness and stability, non-change. Then you have the force of movement and force, energy. You see energy everywhere in the universe: storm, wind, river flowing, sunlight, everything is energy. We don't think of it that way, but that energy is there everywhere in the universe. Okay, and man has now learned to tap this energy. We tap it through wind with windmills. We tap it through sunlight by photovoltaic cells. We tap it by the river flowing and even the tides coming in by making turbines move. Okay, stopping, building a dam. But the yogi can tap this energy in the universe without physical instruments. That's the only difference. So he knows how to tap this energy, and
I believe you said the other day that sattva does not have control of the vital.
yes, it's too subtle, too civilized, too refined. It has no power to deal with the brute force of the vital. To a certain extent it can, but not enough. It is vital will always win. Everybody knows that. When a desire is there and you want to control the desire, it's very difficult to control it. Okay, so that's it. So triple in its qualities, capable of evolution and involution. So capable of evolution. Nature is slowly revealing the divine qualities inside it: matter, life, mind. Okay, then spiritual consciousness, then the supermind. It will come. The contact of soul and nature generates the play of subjectivity and objectivity, which is our experience of being. We have a subjective element and there is a physical world which is objective. Objective nature, subjective your Purusha. But the subjective not on the surface, deep inside yourself. That is subjective. And the objective world is there, and for you even the body is objective. Even your vital is partly objective. You can look at your own thoughts, you can look at your own emotions. They are outside you. Or separate from you is more accurate. What is to us the subjective first evolves, because the soul consciousness is the first cause, inconscient nature force only the second, and dependent cause. So, what is subjective is first evolves in your consciousness. You start becoming more and more conscious, and you start becoming more and more self-analytical, and then you see the defects in yourself. So there is evolution. Okay, so subjectively you are evolving first. Objectively in the body-mind life, the evolution will come much later. The total of evolution of the objective body-mind life will come only in the supermind. So first a yogi is changing himself subjectively. He can become pure. He can become full of power in the vital. He can become full of light in the mind. So subjective evolution. Okay? Because the soul consciousness is the first cause. Inconscient nature force only the second and dependent cause. But still, it is nature and not soul which supplies the instruments of our subjectivity. So, it is supplying the materials of our subjectivity. You have your body action. If there is no action, if there is no emotion, if there is no vital, you won't develop. How will you develop yourself in the absence of action, and emotion and thoughts. It's only through these things that you are developing yourself. Just imagine if there's none of these, there is no evolution possible. So that's what nature is supplying the material for your evolution. That's what he's saying. Okay. First in order come buddhi, discriminative or determinative power evolving out of nature force. So this is where the chart would have been very useful, but I'm sorry, I'll bring it next time. Okay, so and its subordinate power of self-discriminating ego. So in that chart, I'll tell you orally, the Sankhya philosophy starts with the 24 principles. There's an objective aspect and there's a subjective aspect. The objective aspect is matter, substance, energy. So that will divide into many other things. The subjective aspect is, first of all, there is a buddhi. Buddhi is the mahas. Okay? Mahas is often interpreted as supermind. Then there is the ahankara, the ego. The ego is born from the subjective aspect, the ego comes. Ego is quite high up. In other words, you can also say individuality. The individuality starts at the overmind level.
Mm-hmm.
In the supermind, there is a beginning of separation, multiplicity. And multiplicity implies ego. Because individuality. So then there is the manas. This is the subjective aspect. Manas is the physical mind, that part of the mind which interprets the senses. Okay, so that's the manas. So there is a subjective aspect. The objective aspect will divide itself into, we'll come to it when I read. Okay, so the manas. Then as a secondary evolution, there arises out of these the power which seizes the discriminations of objects, sense mind or manas. Manas is the physical mind. We must record the Indian names because the corresponding English words are not real equivalents. As a tertiary evolution out of sense mind, we have the specializing organic senses, 10 in number, 5 of perception, 5 of action. So, this I will tell you what they are. There is the 5 of perception and 5 of action. So, if they use the words inferent senses and efferent senses. Okay. Jnanendriya is the inferent senses. The objective world is sending data to you through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue and touch. So these are the inferent senses, you call them jnanendriyas. You are interacting with the world. And the karmendriyas are, you are interacting with the world. The world is interacting with you through the senses, and you are interacting with the world through your hands, your legs, the 2 organs at the lower end of the body, and your speech. When I speak, there is an effect in the physical world. It can be harsh, it can be soft, it can be sweet, it can be bitter. So you are interacting with the world. Constant interaction between world and individual. Okay, so then the senses are eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin. And this one is hand, foot, mouth, the 2 organs at the lower end of the body. So this is the subjective aspect. Then there is the objective aspect. So 10 in number, 5 of action. Next, the powers of each sense of perception, sound, form, scent. Now this is the objective aspect. The objective aspect, there is the sound which corresponds to ether. So the objective aspect separates itself into ether, air, fire, water, earth. But ether, air, fire, water, earth are not ether, air, fire, water, earth. They are representative, they are descriptive of the substance of the ether. The substance of the, they are descriptive of the density of the substance. They are descriptive of the density of the substance. I made a mess in the beginning. Okay. So, ether is very, very subtle. Then you have air, which you can feel. So, it is less subtle.
So science has not yet discovered ether.
Science has discovered up to air.
Up to air only.
But in fact, they say that ether, there is nothing. It is so subtle that there is nothing. Okay? Science has not discovered the real substance. But they know that air, fire, water, earth exists. They know that. But in the Sankhya philosophy, it is not air, fire, earth. It is descriptive of the density of the substance, as I said. Air is slightly more dense than ether because you can feel it. You can feel the wind on your cheeks. Okay? Fire, you can even see it. And that corresponds to the contact with the eye. Then there is water, which corresponds to taste. And finally, you have earth, which corresponds to smell. Now, when you start going upwards from earth, in earth, all the five senses are there. You have form, taste, smell, contact, and sound also. But as you go up, one by one, they start getting eliminated. So when you go to water, the smell element goes away. Then when you go to fire, taste and smell disappear. So as you keep going higher and higher, these senses, only sound remains at the last. There is the Sankhya philosophy. Okay, so you have got 5, 5, 5, 5, and then these, it comes to 24 basic principles. That's why it's called Sankhya. Sankhya is number. So the whole philosophy of, they are the basic elements, fundamental elements in nature. That's the philosophy. Okay, so then you have, he's saying, next the powers of each sense of perception, sound, form, scent, etc., which give their values to objects for the mind and make things what they are to our subjectivity. And as a substantial basis for these, the primary conditions of the objects of sense, the 5 elements of ancient philosophy, or rather elementary conditions of nature, Pancha Bhuta, they are the ether, air, fire, water, earth, which constitute objects by their various combination. So all the forms in the physical world are combination of these 5 grades of substance. Matter, life, mind, etc., etc. So in a stone, don't think there's only matter. There's also a little bit of life in it. There's also a little bit of light in it. So this is what he's saying. And that's what is meant by involution. All these things are involved there.
It comes down into it, yeah.
Okay. That would be very helpful if the chart were there. I'll give you the chart next time.
So,
I must not forget.
next para.
Yeah. Reflected in the pure consciousness of Purusha, these degrees and powers of nature force become the material of our impure subjectivity. Impure because its action is dependent on the perceptions of the objective world and on their subjective reactions. Buddhi, which is simply the determinative power that determines all inertly out of indeterminate inconscient force, takes for us the form of intelligence and will. Manas, the inconscient force which seizes nature's discriminations by objective action and reaction and grasps at them by attraction, becomes sense perception and desire, the 2 crude terms of degradations or degradations of intelligence and will. Becomes the sense mind sensational, emotive, volitional in the lower sense of wish, hope, longing, passion, vital impulsion, all the deformations, vikara. Vikara is a Sanskrit word for deformation of will. The senses become the instruments of sense mind, the perceptive 5 of our sense knowledge, the active 5 of our impulsions and vital habits, mediators between the subjective and objective. The rest are the objects of our consciousness, Vishaya, or the senses. So, this is a little involved, but When I give you the chart, it will be very clear. Okay, so I'm sorry I couldn't do that, but next time I must remember and do it. Okay? So, he is describing the Sankhya philosophy. This is not anything to do with him. He is just giving you the Sankhya philosophy as accepted by the Gita. Gita accepts all this. Even Srimdo accepts. This is not, but he's not too much bothered about it. This is a very superficial aspect. He is concerned mainly with the psychological aspect, the deeper aspects. So I go to the next para. This order of evolution seems contrary to that which we perceive as the order of the material evolution. I'll read the whole para first, then we'll come back to it. But if we remember that even buddhi is in itself an inert action of inconscient nature, and that there is certainly in this sense an inconscient will and intelligence, a discriminative and determinative force even in the atom. If we observe the crude inconscient stuff of sensation, emotion, memory, impulsion in the plant and in the subconscious forms of existence, if we look at these powers of nature force, assuming the forms of our subjectivity in the evolving consciousness of animal and man, we shall see that the Sankhya system squares well enough with all that modern inquiry has elicited by its observation of material nature. So there is a parallel between science and Sankhya. Okay, so that's what he's saying. In material nature, in the evolution of the soul, back from Prakriti towards Purusha, the reverse order has to be taken to the original nature evolution. And that is how the Upanishads and the Gita, following and almost quoting the Upanishads, state the ascending order of our subjective powers. Supreme, they say, beyond the objects are the senses. Supreme over the senses, the mind. Supreme over the mind, the intelligent will. And that which is supreme over the intelligent will is He. He should have put He in a capital H. Okay, that's a Purusha. Is a conscious self, the Purusha. Therefore, says the Gita, it is this Purusha, this supreme cause of our subjective life, which we have to understand and become aware of by the intelligence. In that, we have to fix our will. So holding our lower subjective self in nature firmly poised and stilled by means of the greater, really conscious self, we can destroy the restless, ever-active enemy of our peace and self-mastery, the mind's desire. So, what he's saying in brief is, the Sankhya philosophy is giving the order downwards. First there is the Purusha Prakriti principle, Chit Shakti. Then there is the Buddhi, which is they use the word Mahas also, which is supermind. Then there is overmind, the ego starts, Ahankara, and then Chitta and the Manas. This is the way it comes down. And then it divides into different senses and sense objects, and here Karmendriya, Jnanendriya. But in the evolution, it's a reverse. And that's what the Gita is telling you. The Gita is telling you that in the evolution, it's the reverse. You start from the senses, okay, and the manas is superior to the senses, the buddhi is superior to the manas, and the purusha is superior to the buddhi. It goes backwards. In very simple, there is involution and there is evolution. The involution is described by the Sankhya philosophy, and the Gita is insisting on the evolution upwards. Sri Aurobindo gives importance to both, downwards and upwards. So, now we'll look at each sentence because it corresponds very much to Sri Aurobindo's yoga. So now, this order of evolution seems contrary to that which we perceive as the order in the material evolution. Because material evolution, from matter has come out life, and from life has come out mind. This much
That's
is
how
there.
we usually see
Yeah.
it.
And
Yes.
Sankhya is saying the opposite. It's coming down from there. It seems to be the opposite. But there's involution and there's evolution. Both are right. Okay. So. But if we remember that even buddhi is in itself an inert action of inconscient nature. So, what is science saying? That your intelligence is a product of matter. Your emotions are a product of matter. Even the Charvaka philosophy in India also says the same. And if you challenge them and tell them, how can matter give subjective and psychological emotions? How is that possible? How is mind, which is capable of thought, come from matter? They will reply in this way, the Charvakas. They will tell you it's a chemical combination that produces these. Science also says the same thing. It's a process of matter which evolves and gives you these things. So they give an interesting example. They say, take pan, betel nut, betel leaf. It is green in color. And take chunam. Chunam is lime, which is white in color.
Yes.
And put them together and chew them in your mouth, you get red color.
Yeah.
So this is the example they give. They say that it's a chemical reaction of matter itself. So it's quite convincing. So this is what the Charvaka says. So that's what they're saying here. Buddhi is in itself an inert action of inconscient nature. Okay? And that there is certainly in this sense an inconscient will and intelligence, a discriminative and determinative force even in the atom. In fact, science has seen something very interesting. If you go down to there is laws in the physical world. But when you go down to the atomic level, you can never say exactly what the position will be of each. If you know the position, you don't know the velocity. If you know the velocity, you don't know the position exactly. A little uncertainty is there. Okay. So, you can attribute this to the free will of the atom. It is free to do what it wants. If we observe the crude inconscient stuff of sensations, emotion, memory, impulsion in the plant and in the subconscious forms of existence, if we look at these powers of nature force, assuming the forms of our subjectivity in the evolving consciousness of animal and man, we shall see that the Sankhya system squares very well with all that modern inquiry has elicited by its observation of material nature. Now, we can go a little more into detail about this.
Yeah.
Look at the plant. Is there not a consciousness in it?
Absolutely.
It is looking for water. There is a purpose in its action. That's intelligence. Consciousness. It is looking for light. If you turn a pot upside down, it doesn't grow down. It goes up again. I want light. So it has got a purpose. So that's what Swami is saying. Nature itself is supplying you the elements of your will and your intelligence.
I might have mentioned this previously, but when we have a climbing vine, if we put a stick in the earth on the east side, it will go to it. If we remove that stick and put it on the west side, it will go to it.
There you are.
Consciousness.
Yeah. And not only that, once it gets a support, its speed increases and winds itself.
Yes.
The speed is not the same as before, to make sure that it is firm and climbing up. So there is intelligence. This is what Sundar is saying. Even nature is what is coming out of nature, inert force. There is consciousness.
Yes.
So you can see in the plant it is there, and it is there in the animal also. You can see it is there. And if it is there, it is that element which is developing in man. The consciousness and the will. So in a sense, the materialist is right. It is all there. In a sense. Because everything is there, it is coming out of matter only. Matter has got the capacity of everything that is above it. That's the involution. But science does not know about involution. So if you have involution, then the two elements are understandable. But science is only on matter and not the higher element. That's the whole problem. Okay? So we shall see that the observation of material nature. In the evolution of the soul, back from Prakriti towards Purusha, the reverse order has to be taken to the original nature evolution. So, reverse order. The one that is coming down, now you have to go up. From inconscience, you have to go to consciousness in the various steps. That's what he's saying. Okay, so and that is how the Upanishads and the Gita, following and almost quoting the Upanishads, state the ascending order of our subjective powers. Supreme, they say, beyond the objects are the senses. The physical objects are there and the senses are superior to them. Because if the senses are not there, you will not perceive the object. So the senses are superior to the object. Then, supreme over the senses, the mind. The mind is superior to the senses. Supreme over the mind, the intelligent will. That which is supreme over the intelligent will is he, is the Purusha. So this is the reverse order. Reverse to the Sankhya philosophy.
Can you talk about supreme over the mind is the intelligent will?
Yes. The intelligent will is the spiritual planes of consciousness. The higher mind,
Okay.
the element mind,
All right.
the intelligent will. Okay? Is a conscious self, the Purusha. Therefore, says the Gita, it is this Purusha, this supreme cause of our subjective life, which we have to understand and become aware of by the intelligence. In that, we have to fix our will. So holding our lower subjective self, which is a lower subjective self, your body, mind, life, in nature, firmly poised and stilled by means of greater, really conscious self. The not really conscious self is your body, mind, life. The really conscious self is the self or the Atman or the Brahman consciousness, if you want to. Okay, so we can destroy the restless, ever active enemy of our peace and self mastery, the mind's desire. So once you have gone to the self, your desire you can destroy the desire. That's what he's saying. For evidently, there are two possibilities of the action of the intelligent will. Okay. So what he means okay. It may take its downward and outward orientation towards a discursive action of the perceptions and the will in the triple play of Prakriti. It can go downwards, okay, or it can go upwards, or it may take its upward and inward orientation towards a settled peace and equality in the calm and immutable purity of the conscious silent soul, no longer subject to the distractions of nature. So we can see that in man. Some people are aspiring, going inwards and upwards, and some are engaged only in the physical world, more towards the animal life. That's what he's saying. This is we can see that very clearly in nature. In the former alternative, the subjective being is at the mercy of the objects of sense. It lives in the outward contact of things.
Which is mostly true of humanity.
Yeah, that's right, mostly. That life is the life of desire. Very clear. For the senses, excited by their objects, create a restless or often violent disturbance. A strong or even headlong outward movement towards a seizure of these objects and their enjoyment, and they carry away the sense mind, as the winds carry away a ship upon the sea. He has put that in double quotes because this is a quote from the Gita. Okay? So, now this is what we are meaning by the mind is not capable of controlling the vital. That's what is meant.
Yeah.
The wind will sweep the ship away and your vital will throw away the mind and mental decisions. Okay, so the mind, subjected to the emotions, passions, longings, impulsions, awakened by this outward movement of the senses, carries away similarly the intelligent will, which loses therefore its power of calm discrimination and mastery.
So that's only when the mind is subjected to the emotions.
That's right. Going downwards. Not only emotions, but the body also. Because you are attracted to physical things. You see beautiful things, you hear beautiful things, you see beautiful things, you are attracted. Okay, you are going downwards. Subjection of the soul to the confused play of the three gunas of Prakriti in their eternal entangled twining and wrestling. Or is it twinning? Entangled? You think it's, no, it is twining.
It's twining.
Twine, yeah.
Twining,
Yeah.
wrapping around.
Yes, that's right. And wrestling, ignorance, a false, sensuous, objective life of the soul, enslavement to grief and wrath and attachment and passion are the results of the downward trend of the buddhi. If you are attached to your body, mind, life, the result will be enslavement to grief and wrath and attachment and passion. Okay. The troubled life of the ordinary, unenlightened, undisciplined man. Those who like the Vedantins,
No, Vedavadins.
eh?
Vedavadins.
Oh, that's a alternative in the. I also noted that. Yeah, those who use Vedas
Ah.
for material ends. No, what did you say?
Vedavadins.
Yeah, Vedavadins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those who, like the Vedavadins,
Yeah. No, those who, like the Vedavadins,
yes,
make sense enjoyment the object of action and fulfillment, the highest aim of the soul, are misleading guides.
yes,
Those who are interested only in
Hedonist-
material gains and
Hedon-
enjoyment in heaven,
yes,
the Vedavadins. The inner subjective self-delight, independent of our objects, is the true aim and high and wide poise of peace and liberations. So he is distinguishing the downward movement and the upward movement. Downward movement will give you ignorance and suffering. The upward movement will give you liberation, knowledge, and peace, and you will go upwards. Therefore, it is the upward and inward orientation of the intelligent will that we must resolutely choose with a settled concentration and perseverance. Vyavasaya. We must fix it firmly in the calm self-knowledge of the Purusha. The first movement must be obviously to get rid of desire, which is the whole root of the evil and suffering. And in order to get rid of desire, we must put an end to the cause of desire, the rushing out of the senses to seize and enjoy their objects. We must draw them back when they are inclined thus to rush out, draw them away from their objects. As a tortoise, you pronounce the word in a different way? Tortoise, I know. As the tortoise draws in its limbs into the shell, so these into their source, quiescent in the mind and the
quiescent. Quiescent.
You say quiescent? I pronounce it quiescent because it's quiet. Is it quiescent?
I think it's quiescent.
Okay, it will be interesting to check that. Okay,
We'll
I'll
look
do
it
that.
up.
So,
Okay.
I'll follow your advice. Quiescent in the mind quiescent in intelligence, the intelligence quiescent in the soul and its self-knowledge. Observing the action of nature, observing, witness, consciousness, but not subject to it, not desiring anything that the objective life can give. So, he is telling you very interestingly what is the, therefore, is the upward and inward. Upward is the going upward for knowledge. Inward is the psychic being. Okay. orientation of the intelligent will that we must resolutely choose with a settled concentration and perseverance. Vyavasaya. We must fix it firmly in the calm knowledge, self-knowledge of the Purusha. The first movement must be obviously to get rid of desire. Desire is the one that pulls you outwards. So you must pull yourself inwards. These senses are often compared to horses rushing wildly out. So you have to rein them in with your intelligent will. The intelligent will can do that, control to a certain extent. This is also called the pratyahara. Pratyahara in the Raja Yoga. The fifth element is the pratyahara. You control the senses. Don't let them. Just as you feed your body, you also feed your senses with the sense perceptions. And the sense objects are food for the vital. So you have to pull them in. And the image given in the Gita is beautiful. The tortoise, which
Yes.
protects itself, legs and
Yes,
it
yes.
puts itself into the shell, into its own shell. So that's exactly what you have to do. Pull your senses in and not let them rush out like wild. The rushing out of the senses to seize and enjoy their objects. We must draw them back when they are inclined thus to rush out, draw them away from their objects, as the tortoise draws in its limbs into the shell. So these into their source, quiescent in the mind, or rather, okay, what did you say?
Quiescent.
Quiescent
I'll
in
look
the
it
mind.
up.
The mind quiescent in intelligence, the intelligence quiescent in the soul and self-knowledge. Observing the action of nature, you separate yourself and you become the witness only, but not involved in the action. Okay? But not subject to it, not desiring anything that the objective life can give.
Good.
So we stop here today,
Yes. Thank you, Ranga.
and next time the chart must come.
Namaste all. Tomorrow we will have Savitri.